In the heart of ancient Greece, where gods were believed to walk among mortals, a primal force shaped the very essence of worship. This wasn't just about war, wisdom, or the lofty ideals of justice. It was about life itself, raw, unbridled, and divine. Welcome to the Phallic gods of ancient Greece. Temples, rituals, and divine desire. Today, we embark on a journey to uncover the sacred, the sensual, and the often shocking truths of a world where fertility was revered as power and desire was seen as a divine gift. We'll explore the gods, temples, and rituals that celebrated the phallus, not as a mere symbol of lust, but as an emblem of creation, protection, and the eternal cycle of life. To the ancient Greeks, fertility was the heartbeat of existence. In a world where harvests could fail, where infant mortality was high, and where survival depended on the whims of nature, the ability to create life was nothing short of miraculous. The phallus, far from being a crude or vulgar image, was a sacred symbol, a testament to the generative force that sustained crops, livestock, and human communities. It was a sign of divine favor, a promise of abundance, and a shield against misfortune. This reverence wasn't rooted in hedonism or base desire. Instead, it reflected a profound respect for the natural world and the gods who governed it. From rural shrines to grand urban temples, the worship of phallic gods like Priapus, Dionysus, and Hermes wove together the sensual and the spiritual, creating a tapestry of rituals that celebrated the raw energy of life. These practices weren't fringe or secretive. They were central to Greek religion, integrated into festivals, art, and daily life. In this exploration, we'll journey through the myths, temples, and ceremonies that defined this unique aspect of Greek culture. Why did the Greeks elevate the phallus to divine status? How did ecstatic, orgiastic celebrations become sacred acts of worship? And what do these practices reveal about a civilization that laid the foundations for Western thought? From the rustic shrines of Pan to the wild bacchanalia of Dionysus, we will uncover the stories of gods and mortals who embraced desire as a path to the divine. Priapus, the guardian of fertility. Let's begin with Priapus, one of the most striking figures in the Greek pantheon. Known as the god of gardens, fertility, and unapologetic virility, Priapus was a deity of both reverence and humor. His origins are shrouded in myth. Some stories claim he was the son of Aphrodite, goddess of love, and Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy. Others suggest Zeus or Hermes as his father, tying him to the divine elite. Regardless of his parentage, Priapus was unmistakable, depicted with an exaggerated, often comically oversized phallus that symbolized his role as a protector of abundance. In rural Greece, Priapus was a guardian of the land. Farmers erected wooden or stone statues of him in their fields, vineyards, and orchards, believing his presence would ensure fertile soil and bountiful harvests. These statues, often painted bright red to signify vitality, stood as sentinels against drought, pests, and misfortune. Offerings of wine, figs, or flowers were placed at their bases, accompanied by prayers for prosperity. A farmer might whisper, "Priapus, grant my fields life as you embody life," before planting his crops. But Priapus' influence wasn't limited to the countryside. In cities like Athens, his imagery merged with that of Hermes in the form of Hermes, stone pillars topped with a bust of the god and featuring a prominent phallus. These Hermes stood at crossroads, city gates, and even private doorways, serving as both religious icons and protective talismans. They were believed to ward off evil spirits and bring good fortune to those who passed by. The reverence for these symbols was so deep that their desecration was a serious offense. In 415 BCE, Athens faced a scandal that shook its foundations. On the eve of the Sicilian expedition, a critical military campaign during the Peloponnesian War, unknown Vandals defaced the city's Hermes, smashing their phallic features. The act was seen as a direct affront to the gods, a sacrilege that threatened divine favor. The historian Thucydides records the public's outrage, noting that the desecration was interpreted as an omen of doom. The ensuing investigation led to accusations of treason and impiety, with figures like Alcibiades implicated. The incident reveals just how seriously the Greeks took these symbols, not as mere decorations, but as sacred links to the divine. Priapus worship was as bold as his imagery. In rural festivals, communities gathered around his statues, singing hymns that blended reverence with earthy humor. The Priapeia, a collection of poems from the Hellenistic period, captures this duality. One verse might praise Priapus as the god who makes the earth yield, while another cheekily warns trespassers of his punishing staff. These poems, often inscribed on shrines, show a god who is both protector and provocateur, divine yet deeply human. Rituals for Priapus varied by region. In some villages, worshippers danced around phallic effigies, their movements mimicking the rhythms of planting and growth. In others, offerings included small phallic amulets, worn as charms or buried in fields to ensure fertility. These practices weren't seen as crude. They were practical, a way to align human efforts with divine power. Priapus, with his exaggerated form, embodied the unapologetic vitality that the Greeks saw as essential to survival. The cult of Priapus also highlights the Greeks' complex relationship with sexuality. Unlike modern taboos, the Greeks viewed sexual imagery in religious contexts as natural, even sacred. Priapus' exaggerated features weren't meant to shock, but to celebrate the generative force that connected humans to the gods. His worship reminds us that in ancient Greece, the line between the sacred and the sensual was fluid, each informing the other. Dionysus and the ecstasy of the Bacchanalia. If Priapus guarded the physical fertility of the land, Dionysus ruled the spiritual and emotional realms of ecstasy. As the god of wine, revelry, and liberation, Dionysus was a deity of transformation, breaking down barriers between the human and the divine. His worship, particularly through the Bacchanalia, was a celebration of life's wildest impulses, where music, dance, and communal passion became acts of devotion. The Bacchanalia, named for Bacchus, the Roman equivalent of Dionysus, were festivals that pushed the boundaries of social norms. In Greece, these events were known as Dionysia or Lenaea, depending on the region and season. They were far more than drunken revels. They were sacred rites, designed to channel the god's chaotic energy. Participants believed that by surrendering to Dionysus, they could transcend their mortal limitations and touch the divine. At the heart of these festivals were the Maenads, women devoted to Dionysus. Often marginalized in Greece's patriarchal society, Maenads found freedom in his worship. Clad in fawn skins, crowned with ivy, and carrying Thyrsus staffs, they danced in a frenzy, believed to be possessed by the god's spirit. The playwright Euripides, in his tragedy The Bacchae, describes their wild abandon. They dance with the god's fire in their veins, tearing through the mountains, unstoppable. This wasn't mere performance. It was a spiritual act, a communion with Dionysus that blurred the lines between human and divine. The Bacchanalia often took place in remote groves or mountains, away from the constraints of urban life. Wine flowed freely, loosening inhibitions and fostering a sense of unity. Music drums, flutes, and cymbals drove the rhythm of the dances, which could last for hours or even days. In some rituals, participants engaged in symbolic or literal acts of union, reflecting the god's association with fertility and creation. These acts, often described as orgiastic, weren't about personal gratification. They were offerings to Dionysus, meant to ensure the fertility of the community and the land. But the Bacchanalia weren't without controversy. Their intensity and lack of restraint alarmed those who valued order. When Greek practices spread to Rome, the Roman Senate took drastic action. In 186 BCE, they banned the Bacchanalia, citing fears that the festivals encouraged rebellion and moral decay. The historian Livy recounts the Senate's concerns, describing secret nighttime rites and unchecked passion. Yet in Greece, these festivals persisted, their popularity a testament to Dionysus' enduring appeal. Dionysus' temples, like those at Delos and Athens, were architectural marvels that reflected his dual nature. The sanctuary of Dionysus at Delos featured stone phalluses on pedestals, alongside statues of the god wreathed in vines. These symbols linked physical fertility to spiritual transcendence, reminding worshippers that Dionysus was both a god of the body and the soul. His festivals, whether urban or rural, were a space where Greeks could explore the full spectrum of human experience, from joy to madness. The Maenads' role in these rites is particularly significant. In a society where women's religious roles were often limited, Dionysus offered a rare opportunity for agency. As priestesses or participants, women could lead rituals, speak for the god, and embody his power. This subversion of norms made Dionysus a revolutionary figure, challenging the rigid structures of Greek society while remaining firmly rooted in its religious traditions. Hermes, Pan, and the Phallic landscape. While Priapus and Dionysus dominated the realm of fertility worship, other gods carried the phallic mantle in subtler, but equally significant ways. Hermes, the messenger god, was a multifaceted deity, overseeing travel, commerce, and communication. But he was also a protector of fertility, embodied in the herms that dotted the Greek landscape. These stone pillars, topped with a bust of Hermes and featuring a phallus, were ubiquitous in ancient Greece, standing at crossroads, marketplaces, and private homes. Herms were more than artistic curiosities. They were sacred objects, believed to protect travelers and ensure prosperity. Passers-by left offerings, oil, flowers, or small tokens at their bases, seeking Hermes' blessing for safe journeys or fruitful endeavors. The phallic element of the herm wasn't incidental. It tied Hermes to the generative forces of life, aligning his role as a guide with the broader theme of creation. The importance of herms is evident in their cultural impact. Beyond the 415 BCE scandal, herms were a constant presence in Greek literature and art. The poet Hesiod mentions them as markers of sacred spaces, while vase paintings depict travelers pausing to honor them. Their dual role as religious and civic symbols underscores the integration of phallic imagery into everyday life. Pan, the goat-footed god of the wild, offered a more rustic take on fertility worship. Associated with shepherds, hunters, and the untamed landscapes of Arcadia, Pan was a deity of instinct and vitality. His shrines, often located in caves or groves, were simple but powerful, marked by carvings or paintings of his phallic form. Unlike the polished herms of Hermes, Pan's imagery was raw, reflecting the untamed energy of nature. Pan's myths are filled with tales of pursuit as he chased nymphs through forests and mountains. These stories, while playful, carried a deeper meaning. Pan embodied the relentless drive of life, the force that pushed plants to grow and animals to reproduce. His worship was less formal than that of Dionysus or Hermes, often involving spontaneous songs, dances, or offerings of milk and honey. Shepherds might play a flute at a Pan shrine, asking for healthy flocks or protection from predators. Both Hermes and Pan, though distinct, shared a common thread with Priapus and Dionysus, the phallus as a symbol of life's unstoppable force. Their worship connected Greeks to the land, the gods, and each other, creating a shared language of fertility that transcended social and geographic boundaries. From urban Athens to remote Arcadia, these gods shaped a landscape where the divine was ever present, woven into the fabric of daily life. Temples and rituals of divine desire. The worship of phallic gods wasn't confined to makeshift shrines or rural festivals. It found expression in some of Greece's most sacred spaces, temples dedicated to deities like Dionysus, Aphrodite, and even lesser-known figures like Orthia. These temples, often adorned with phallic imagery, were architectural testaments to the Greeks' reverence for fertility. At the sanctuary of Dionysus in Delos, for example, stone phalluses sit on pedestals, their stark forms contrasting with the delicate vines carved into the surrounding walls. These weren't hidden or shameful. They were central to the temple's purpose, symbolizing the god's life-giving power. Rituals in these temples varied widely. In urban centers, priests and priestesses conducted formal ceremonies, pouring libations of wine or oil over altars and chanting hymns. In rural areas, festivals like the Phalliphoria took a more communal approach. During these processions, villagers carried giant phallic effigies through the streets, singing songs that blended reverence with laughter. The historian Herodotus describes one such event, noting the crowd's joy as they hoisted a wooden phallus taller than a man through their village, praying for a good harvest. The mysteries of Dionysus, held in secret at sites like Eleusis, were among the most enigmatic rituals. Initiates, sworn to secrecy, participated in rites that combined symbolic unions, wine-fueled visions, and communal celebrations. While the exact details remain lost, punishable by death for those who revealed them, texts suggest a focus on rebirth and transcendence, with the phallus as a symbol of renewal. These mysteries attracted Greeks from all walks of life, from farmers to philosophers, united by their desire to connect with the divine. Women played a pivotal role in these rituals, challenging the male-dominated norms of Greek religion. As priestesses, maenads, or initiates, they led ceremonies, channeled divine energy, and embodied the god's power. This participation wasn't merely symbolic. It gave women a voice in a society that often silenced them. The worship of phallic gods, far from being a male-centric practice, was a shared celebration of creation, embracing both genders in its rituals. The integration of phallic imagery into temples and festivals underscores a key aspect of Greek religion, its embrace of the physical as a path to the spiritual. The body, with its desires and creative potential, was seen as a vessel for divine energy. By honoring the phallus, the Greeks honored life itself, recognizing its power to sustain and transform. Legacy and misconceptions. The legacy of Greece's phallic gods is a tale of misunderstanding and rediscovery. When Victorian archaeologists began excavating Greek sites in the 19th century, they were often shocked by the prevalence of phallic imagery. Accustomed to their era's prudish sensibilities, they labeled these artifacts obscene or depraved, sometimes censoring their findings or hiding them in museum basements. A statue of Priapus, for example, might be described in field notes as indecent, its religious significance ignored. This reaction reflects a broader cultural divide. The Greeks saw no shame in the phallus. To them, it was a symbol of life's continuity, not a source of embarrassment. Their art, from vase paintings to temple reliefs, celebrated the body as a divine creation, worthy of reverence. Victorian scholars, bound by their own moral framework, struggled to grasp this perspective, often misinterpreting sacred objects as mere pornography. Modern scholars have worked to correct these misconceptions. By studying texts, artifacts, and archaeological sites, they've revealed the depth of phallic worship in Greek culture. The Herms of Hermes, once dismissed as crude, are now recognized as complex symbols of protection and prosperity. The Bacchanalia, once condemned as debauchery, are understood as profound spiritual experiences. Even Priapus, with his exaggerated form, is seen as a guardian of life's essential forces, not a figure of ridicule. The influence of these gods extends beyond ancient Greece. Phallic symbols, though less overt, persist in modern culture, from fertility rituals in rural communities to the enduring myths of Dionysus and Pan. These stories remind us of a time when desire was not separate from divinity, when the body was a bridge to the sacred. By exploring the worship of phallic gods, we gain insight into a civilization that embraced life in all its complexity, its joys, its passions, and its mysteries. The Phallic gods of ancient Greece, Priapus, Dionysus, Hermes, Pan, and others were more than deities. They were embodiments of life's unstoppable force. Their temples, from the grand sanctuary of Dionysus to the humble caves of Pan, were spaces where Greeks celebrated creation in all its forms. Their rituals, from the wild bacchanalia to the solemn offerings at Hermes, wove together the sensual and the spiritual, reminding us that desire, when channeled through faith, could be divine. These practices reveal a Greece unafraid to confront the raw power of existence. In a world of uncertainty, where harvests could fail and lives could be lost, the phallus was a symbol of hope, a promise that life would endure. By honoring these gods, the Greeks honored themselves, their communities, and the natural world that sustained them. This is just one story from the shadows of history, but there are countless others waiting to be told. If you've been captivated by the world of Greece's phallic gods, there's more to discover. Subscribe to the Blood Archive on YouTube, hit the bell icon, and join our community of history lovers. Together, we'll uncover the untold tales of the ancient world, from the sacred to the scandalous. Until next time, keep exploring the past. It's wilder than you think.